The World's Strongest is the second of the Dragon Ball specials to release. Around the time of the second half of the Saiyan Saga, we feature lots of tropes and ideas that were also in that portion of the story. There is a beam struggle. There is the spirit bomb used to defeat the final villain. Piccolo gets involved because he's a very popular character, because of course, why not involve him? And Goku, of course, cycles through his Kaioken techniques. There are a lot of mirrors to the second half of the Saiyan Saga in The World's Strongest, but there are also a lot of callbacks. There are a lot of callbacks to the original Dragon Ball storyline. Mainly the Red Ribbon Army arc era, maybe. Just a little bit around that time. We open with an elderly gentleman in the icy tundras collecting Dragon Balls. And we have Gohan and Oolong for once. Oolong is along for the ride to help Gohan collect the Dragon Balls. In fact, he was the one who wanted to do it in the first place. He's the one who roped Gohan into a Dragon Ball hunt. And honestly, I would have loved to have just watched Oolong and Gohan go on a Dragon Ball hunt. Just, it would have been really fun to see, but they're part way through, and they notice that the Dragon Balls are all being collected and gathered together, so they go off to take a look at that, try to gather the Dragon Balls first, take them away from whoever's collecting them or whatnot, or whatever. And we see that the person collecting it is the elderly gentleman, who summons the dragon before Oolong can make his wish. And apparently Oolong was just going to wish for the same thing he wished the very first time in the Pilaf Saga, the excellent Pilaf Saga. Which is, of course, women's undergarments. Anyways, the elderly gentleman asks the dragon to melt some ice. Now, this is different ice than normal ice. This is supernatural ice. This is the type of ice that won't melt. The sun can get very hot around this area, but the ice won't melt. It's like natural ice that's iced over the area and makes it all icy, cold. And the elderly gentleman's compatriot, partner, friend, Dr. Wheelo, is trapped in the laboratory that has been covered in a glacier ice place. So the dragon has to melt the ice. He asks the dragon to melt the ice, and the dragon says, fine, I'll melt the ice. So he melts the ice, and then he goes away. Gohan and Oolong go to take a look at what's going on, and then they get encountered by Blue Cybermen. They're biomen created by Dr. Cochin, that's the elderly gentleman, and Dr. Wheelo, which is Brain Boy right there. Now, these things are obviously reskins of the Cybermen, because this is the Saiyan Saga, namely the Nappa and Vegeta encounter Saiyan Saga portion of that Saiyan Saga arc. So we're going to be seeing those types of story beats come into this film. So the Biomen encounter Gohan, and they beat him up a little bit. And then Piccolo shows up, and he's easily able to stop the Biomen. But then he gets hit by a mysterious red beam. We don't know what that is. And then Gohan falls under the ice. He and Oolong escape to go somewhere else. Gohan wants to take a look at Piccolo, but Oolong's like, Piccolo's super strong, he can take care of himself. So they go off back home. Gohan dreams about Piccolo, and we get an excellent insert song. I don't know if I mentioned this with my Dead Zone mentioning this, but there are two insert songs that show up in these Dragon Ball Z films, the two earliest films, this one and Dead Zone, that I can't remember who sang the songs. I think it might actually just be Masako Onisawa, but I'm not sure. I can't tell you what they were named. I do know the name of the second song. It's called Piccolo Daisuke, or Daisuke, Daisuke Piccolo, or something like that. I don't know what it means. I'm not fluent in Japanese by any means. But they removed that song from the re-release redubbings of these films. I have VHS copies that I have in storage. I don't feel like going to get them, but in the original they were called the Pioneer dub. I have an example on DVD of the third film. This one here is Tree of Might, the movie, but this will be the next video we talk about, the next installment, but I brought this DVD out for a particular reason. You see Pioneer here? Pioneer was the Ocean group, basically. But they were the names on the physical releases of the first three films. We have Dragon Ball Z, the movie, The Tree of Might, and The World's Strongest, and Dead Zone. I have the VHS copies of these two, and I have the DVD copy for Tree of Might. The Pioneer dub featured the Ocean group primarily for voicing all of the characters. But in the Ocean group, or Pioneer dub, of the original two movies, the insert song, the Japanese insert song that played halfway through the film in both Dead Zone and in The World's Strongest, remained intact. It was still there. You could listen to it. And you are also able to listen to the end credits theme with the songy jingle, and at the start of the film, Chala Hichala was still there. I don't know how they were able to get that in that, but then when they redubbed it with the Funimation in-house group with Sean Schimmel and all Stephanie Dolny and all these other guys that came in to redub everything, they got rid of the songs. In the original English broadcast dub version for both movies here, this one here and this one, the intro has no Chala He Chala. If you pick the dub option to have English broadcast with Japanese soundtrack, obviously Chala is brought back in. But in the original English broadcast version that aired on Cartoon Network and all that stuff, they didn't have the Piccolo Daisuke, didn't have all of that stuff in there, which is odd, but okay. And on these physical releases, this is particularly connected to the Orange Bricks releases. And even in the Orange Brick releases, they have three dub options, three language options. You have the English broadcast with Japanese soundtrack, which is what most people tend to go with, but if you like the English broadcast with the English soundtrack, you would get Brooks Faulkner. So that's awesome. And then they have the Japanese voice cast with the Japanese soundtrack. If you pick the Japanese voice cast with the Japanese soundtrack, you would get the Japanese opening of the Chala Hichala. You would get, and Chala Hichala is also in the Japanese soundtrack version with the English dub. But I'm not sure about the insert song in the middle. I think with the Japanese soundtrack with the English broadcast, they have the jingle, the instrumental version of that insert song for both of this one and World's Strongest, but they don't actually include the vocals, the actual singing portion. So if you wanted that on these copies, you would have to go to the Japanese voice, Japanese soundtrack. To my knowledge, I think you could just get by with Japanese soundtrack only, English broadcast, but I don't know, it was very confusing between the two English options, one of them not having that insert song, one of them having it. Sometimes even when you do pick the English option, I will have to rewatch the Android Saga to confirm this. There are a couple insert songs. There's not too many insert songs during the Dragon Ball Z portion of this franchise. There were plenty during the original Dragon Ball, OG Dragon Ball era. There was a lot playing. There's a lot of insert songs. There's like the Red Ribbon Army theme, the Misase Tenkaichi during the 21st with Goku fighting Roshi. There were Wolf Hurricane for Yamcha. There was a lot of themes for characters and for thematic stuff, insert songs that were playing. You didn't get too many during Dragon Ball Z. So I found it pretty cool that we had a couple insert songs in the first 2 Dragon Ball Z movies. I got a little bit off topic there, but there's a little bit of historicalness. After that insert song, where Gohan dreams of Piccolo in this cool little animation, cutesy little animation cycle, because, you know, Gohan really looks up to Piccolo. He's like the big brother figure. He's not his real dad. I don't know if you can let it know. They're like brother siblings, okay? Piccolo is like, what, 9? he's like a sibling to Gohan, not father figure of the year award or nothing. No. And when I made this comparison when I talked about Dragon Ball Superhero, I have a review on that on this channel if you want to look that up. I might even put it in a little corner wherever up in this little corner here. You might see it if I remember to add that card to go watch that video. But in that, I talk about how Gohan and Goku have a very special bond. A good father and son bond. Goku may not be the best father. It's a joke in American dub that they don't have the best bond. And Dragon Ball Z Abridged also made that joke. ARDBZ excellent little parody as well, made that joke that the bond isn't the best, but they do have a good bond. They do have a real good bond. And in Superhero, Gohan and his daughter Panda have the same type of bond that Gohan shared with his father. The difference is Goku is an absent-minded in the fact that he and his son do share that super strong bond, but Goku's also very good at training, and he's always going off to do that. He's off in the woods, he's off in nature half the time. But Gohan doesn't share his father's love of fighting, but he does share his father's love of nature and the animals and all that stuff. So they do bond over that in various moments throughout. You could see they're rarely sprinkled in. There's a couple moments in these earlier films where you could see that. You definitely see that in the third one. We're going to talk about that one next time. But why am I going off topic here? Yes, because, I brought it up here, how Goku just immediately drops everything to go rescue his kid. That type of bond is very important. And Gohan's bond with Piccolo is more of a sibling type of relationship. Piccolo and Goku are more of a, they were rivals at the start, but they were now. Piccolo mainly was the one who wanted to kill Goku at the start, but at the end, after fighting Goku, he realized his entire life was being somebody else's vengeance trip. It was somebody else's, his previous incarnation, King Piccolo. Piccolo Jr. is not King Piccolo. Piccolo Jr. is not the full reincarnation. Piccolo Jr. is the offspring of King Piccolo, with the memories of King Piccolo. But Piccolo Jr. is different. He is his own person, his own entity, and we get to see that through his bonding with Gohan. And we also get to theorize how, what if Piccolo, the original Namekian, per se, before they defused from calling me Piccolo, what if that Namekian met more people like Gohan instead of seeing the worst of humanity? You could tell that this original Namekian encountered a lot of Van Zants in his time. And if you don't know who Van Zant is, during the Boo Saga, Van Zant was one of the bandit criminals rolling about the countryside, committing all sorts of crimes because law enforcement had basically shut down after Boo rampaged across the entire planet, killing like 80% of the population by this point. So there was a lot of problems there, but Boo was an innocent creature, so as to say. He was very, very destructive because he was told to be. But then when Mr. Sutton came in and said, hey, stop doing that, that's bad, Boo said, okay, I'll stop. But then he encountered the Van Zant character. This Van Zant brought out all sorts of anger that Boo just didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with. And it harbored a lot of darkness sinking into his heart, and then he just split himself into two. and that is very, very parallel to the original Namekian and splitting between Kami and Piccolo. Though we've learned before that he split mainly to get the role of Kami. But that darkness wouldn't have existed, theoretically, had this original Namekian met more people like Gohan. And we later learned that Piccolo Jr., King Piccolo, is the evil incarnate, and yet this evil incarnate's heart could be softened by characters like Gohan, encountering the innocence and kindness of other individuals can soften even an entity that is supposed to just be pure evil. I really liked that type of bond that Gohan and Piccolo had, but it is not a father-son dynamic. I would not say that at all. I'm going on for 7 minutes about that, but let's continue. After that insert song, Gohan wakes up, and Goku is doing his own thing, and then we switch over to the Kame house, with Roshi. He's hanging out with Bulma there for some reason. I guess she visits Kame house from time to time, I guess to visit Krillin, because Krillin's still hanging out, living there. And, I don't know where he is right now, but, the Biomen come to encounter Kame House to counter Roshi because Dr. Kochin, he's out of touch with current events. He wasn't there for the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. He wasn't there for the 21st or the 22nd. Dr. Kochin was out of touch with reality for some reason. So he still thinks that Master Roshi is the strongest character, strongest person in the world, which would have been true prior to the events of the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. So he's wanting to kidnap Roshi to take him back to his lab, Dr. Wilo's lab, to take Roshi's brain out of his body and put Dr. Wilo's brain into Master Roshi's body. Even though Master Roshi's an old man, he has taken the elixir of life. So even though he's old, he will never die of old age. He will just keep living around until somebody punches him to death or something. But that's the theory with Roshi there, so that's one reason why Dr. Wheeler wants Roshi's body. Roshi has a very large, big impact on the world as the Invincible Master, the Turtle Hermit. I love the first half of Dragon Ball, original Dragon Ball, that brings out this legend of Master Roshi that the world seems to have forgotten. After the events of the original Dragon Ball, the world has forgotten characters like Master Roshi. They've forgotten King Piccolo. They've forgotten all of these entities, which to a lot of the 40-plus-year-old humans of the world, they would remember these events because they would have been there 20, 30 years ago during the events of King Piccolo about to take over King's Castle. And he actually did overthrow for a little bit, and he broadcasted that to the whole world. But they do mention that in the 24th, or is it the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament during the Buu Saga. They do mention that some people recognize Piccolo, but not too much. But that's just a plot direction, whatever. But yeah, Dr. Kochin is off in his own little world thinking the Master Roshi's still the strongest in the world. So he kidnaps Roshi, but we get to see Roshi actually do some fighting here, where he actually beats down the Biomen with some pretty good ability there. But then they kidnap Bulma, and Roshi's like, alright, fine, I gotta go with these guys. So he goes to Dr. Kochin's lab, and Dr. Kochin sends out his Bio Warriors. I'm gonna try to see if I can remember everybody's name. Kishimen, Mitsukatsu, Epifuria. Now, if that's wrong, then this guy's Kishimen, this one's Mitsukatsu, but I know this one is Epifuria. But yeah, that's their names. I'm amazed that I can remember that, but I've seen World's Strongest on VHS so many times. I have heard Dr. Kochin introduce these three guys so many times that I have their names burrowed into my head. I just don't know which one of these is which. But that one's Epifuria. They always mention that he is Epifuria. So Roshi fights all three of them at once, and he's actually holding his own for a little bit. This is the one movie, the one original Dragon Ball era, not original, the Dragon Ball Z era movie that shows Roshi actually doing something. During the Saiyan Saga, Roshi wouldn't be too far behind the likes of Krillin and Yamcha. Roshi wouldn't be too far behind them. During the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, Roshi and Tien, the second strongest, or the strongest, arguably, the second strongest, more than likely, under Goku, but he was far more tactical, which is how Tien was able to take out Goku, but Roshi was able to hold his own against Tenshinhan. So you would argue that he would be in third place in regards to the good guys in regards to strength. He was obviously above the likes of Krillin and Yamcha still, but he was struggling against Tien, and Tien was struggling against Roshi. Neither one were able to put the other one down pretty easily. You could argue that Roshi was focusing more on trying to reform Tien, while Tien was more just getting angry and trying to learn and figure out what this guy's angle was. But yeah, Roshi eventually admits that had the fight gone on long and both of them went all out, he probably would have ended up losing. But Roshi admits that he's starting to fall behind, but he's keeping up. By the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, Roshi admits that Krillin and Yamcha have surpassed him. Now, I don't know if he just says that to say that. I think he might still be able to keep up with Yamcha and Krillin and probably beat them if they ever fought. So it is believable by the Saiyan Saga that Roshi is able to do this to these three Bio Warriors. It is believable that this fighter that has generated 100 years of a legend could fight these guys to such a level, though he does admittedly end up losing. But I like the World's Strongest for giving Roshi that last hurrah of doing something, of being part of an ensemble cast again. That was fantastic. The early Dragon Ball era, the first three movies, were just so good about doing that. It was fantastic about doing that. So Roshi loses to the three Bio Warriors, because he's fighting 3-on-1, so naturally he ends up losing. And then Goku gets told by Oolong that Bulma and Roshi have been kidnapped by Dr. Cochin. Now, Oolong remembers where this lab was because he was in the north when the lab was freed from the ice. And Gohan wants to go to help out, but Chi-Chi's like, or something like that, I don't know what. But Goku goes off on his own to take on the Dr. Cochin's minions. And we get to see Goku fight Blob Boy by himself, and he ends up having to use some tactics. I love the tactics and tricks that he tries to use to try to surpass Blob Boy here. Also, another fun little factor here. Look in the back here. This is the Kame insignia, right? And I believe here this is the turtle insignia. This obviously shows a couple things in regards to the story here, is that this one takes place prior to the dying bits. This is why I mentioned this is parallel to the Raditz encounter. That's why he's wearing this gi with this insignia. And around this time he's wearing the Kame insignia, indicating that he has come back from not the Kame insignia, the Kaio insignia. He's come back from King Kai's planet, and he's wearing the Kaio gi with the Kaio techniques. He's showing off those techniques now. And that was pretty interesting to put that in there. Where else am I going with this? Let's see. Yes, he ends up beating Blob Boy by using Kaioken to fly through Blob Boy's blobby stomach to break out the other end. He deflates like a balloon. It was pretty good. He goes into the next floor, and he ends up encountering Epifuria, and he's able to knock Epifuria down pretty easily. But then Kishimen, or is his name Mitsukatsu, I'm not just sure which is which, but the other guy, Electric Boyo, comes in, and Electric Boyo is able to get the jump on Goku. Then Epifuria is able to use his ice abilities to freeze Goku, but then Gohan and Krillin come in for the save, and they end up getting frozen by Epifuria almost immediately. But it's nice for them to come to the save because it motivates Goku to use his Kaioken to break free from the ice. He beats both of the remaining Bio Warriors with minimal difficulty, and the three of them go to find Bulma. And Dr. Kochin ends up explaining his evil plan, saying that his new plan is to put Dr. Wheelo's brain into Goku's body, now that he has learned from Bulma that Goku is the current strongest in the world, although admittedly there is a big plot hole. Out from the corner of the room walks Piccolo, sporting a golden crown of mind control. Now, you might be thinking, Dr. Kochin, you have this guy, Piccolo, as one of your new fighters mind-controlled onto your side. Why don't you put the good doctor's brain inside the Green Man? The Green Man is clearly the second strongest in the world, but how did you think that Piccolo would be inferior to Roshi? That is a big plot point right there, because Roshi was inferior to the original King Piccolo back during King Piccolo's time period, and Dr. Kochin would realize that Piccolo is related at least somehow to the original King Piccolo, so he would know that Piccolo/King Piccolo would be stronger than Roshi. So why wouldn't he want to? Perhaps the good Dr. Wheelo is a little bit racist. He just doesn't want to put his brain inside a green person. He wants to put his brain inside a normal, nice human body. So maybe he wants to put his brain inside Roshi's brain. But Dr. Kochin keeps on saying that Master Roshi is the strongest in the world. But Piccolo clearly is superior to that. We don't know. We don't know. The plot's getting a little bit messy right there. But then again, I mentioned that the plot gets a little bit messy even in the Dead Zone. Probably my favorite of this era of Dragon Ball Z movies. Well, this one's right up there with Dead Zone and being one of my favorites. These two are easily the better of this era of the Dragon Ball Z movies and all that stuff. So Goku ends up fighting Dr. Wheelo's mind-controlling Piccolo, and Gohan's trying to get in between, saying, you two need to stop fighting, you two need to stop blah 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 blah. And then Goku keeps pushing Gohan out, and then Goku and Piccolo get to fight some more. And then Gohan goes to turn on Dr. Kochin and Dr. Wheelo, saying, you guys better stop being bad guys. And Dr. Wheelo's like, don't antagonize the boy, Dr. Kochin. And Dr. Kochin's like, what? He's just a little child. And he turns his hand, his cane, the blast cane, and then the kid goes bad, and then he gets madder and madder, and then he yells really loud, and Fuss Rota's the Dr. Wheelo's wooden wall, metal wall, wall, it shakes and crackles, and that somehow breaks the mind control on Piccolo, and his golden tiara falls off. And Piccolo realizes that he's no longer evil again, and he looks at Goku and Gohan says, alright, I'm not gonna be evil anymore. And then they all turn on the good Dr. Wheelo and the good Dr. Kochin, and they end up fighting Dr. Wheelo, who breaks out of the wall in this giant metal body, and it's clearly physically superior to the strongest man in the world, Goku. He beats him down rather easily. Both Piccolo, Gohan, Krillin, Goku, even Roshi shows up to help out. One of the coolest moments in this early half of the DBZ films, Goku, Krillin, and Master Roshi, with Roshi leading the assault. He shouts, Kamehameha time! And all three of them fire a Kamehameha at the big beastie. It doesn't work, but that moment, that stance of the master and his two pupils all firing their same signature technique at the big guy was one of the best looking scenes, the best trailer shot in the entire film. Easily, to me. It is one of the most memorable moments in this franchise to me, personally. But you never see that. Roshi and his pupils firing a Kamehameha together. That was fantastic to see. It doesn't work. Piccolo does his own signature technique of Ki Blast Barrage, which would later become Vegeta's signature technique. But make no mistake, it was Piccolo's first. He used it against Goku in the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, and then he used it again on Dr. Wheelo. And then it becomes Vegeta's maneuver, apparently. So there we go with the Piccolo. His attack doesn't work, though. And then Goku does his Kaioken times 3, and he beats down on the robot. And then he does Kaioken times 4 to beat back the robot Wheelo's Blasty Blast. And then the Blasty robot Wheelo gets flown out into space. And then everybody thinks it's over, but then Goku goes, no, he's still alive. So he charges his Genkidama, the Spirit Bomb, which is another technique from King Kai that is taught to him, hence the King Kai insignia. And then Piccolo, Gohan, and Krillin fly up into the stratosphere to fight Dr. Wheelo to hold off Wheelo so that Goku can have time to charge his attack. And it was actually pretty cool to see that happen, but then also really funny. Krillin flies up after Gohan and Piccolo do, and he tries to do something, and Dr. Wheelo just smacks him away. And Krillin goes, why does this always happen to me? But you see, Krillin, he has been the butt of the joke since the early original Dragon Ball. I would argue that Krillin is the bigger butt of the joke than even Yamcha. Yamcha, the plot actually tries really hard to make him actually be cool as well as doltish, which doesn't really happen for Krillin. Krillin tries to be cool, then he immediately fails. His initial introduction into this franchise after the Pilaf Saga, he's in a boat right off the shore of Kamehameha's Island, and he's looking all cool and stuff, and he jumps, flying, flipping through the air, looking all cool with his cool face and his eyes all full of confidence, only to land on his head in the sand. And then Goku has to pull his head out of the beach, and then you realize that this guy is gonna be a joke. And he was throughout the entirety of the original Dragon Ball, almost more so than Yamcha. So that's what I would argue, that these things happen to Krillin because it's funny. He's comic relief. It's funny for things to happen to Krillin. You know what happened to Krillin in this one. If you remember the review, I don't know, remember my review too strongly, but if I don't mention it now, if I haven't mentioned it before, and if I have mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again. Gohan, when he was groggy, ends up having a tinkle. Krillin looks up, and it goes right into his mouth. It's hilarious. And then he gets punched really fast, and he doesn't really contribute much, but he's there. He's there. The coolest Krillin moment in these films is his Kamehameha alongside Master Roshi and Goku. That's one of the coolest Krillin moments in the entire all the Dragon Ball Z films. Krillin's best moment was that moment. So you can see that it's all downhill from here. But yeah, Gohan and Piccolo end up actually contributing and doing something to Wheelo. Piccolo was able to do his little mouth blast in Wheelo's face, but then Wheelo turns to look at the ground and says, "Alright, time to blasty blast the world below," and blasty blasts the world below. Then Goku looks at his spirit bomb, and they have a heart-to-heart. And then he fires the spirit bomb up into the air, and it breaks through Wheelo's blasty blast to hit Wheelo square in the face. And then Wheelo blows up, and he's gone. And then everybody goes home. The end. The World's Strongest, I believe, was roughly around the same runtime as Dead Zone. And it had a whole lot more action packed into the film, though admittedly with the sacrifice of an interesting storyline. We have two doctors who were big baddie doctors back in the day who were big baddie bad guys, and then after some sort of big bad thing, illness was breaking Willow's body, so Dr. Kochin takes Willow's brain and puts it into this giant mech suit robot. And I guess he wants a new body because this giant mech suit robot can't exactly go to the grocery store without getting a few looks. So he wants a normal human body so he doesn't get people scared of him when he goes to the grocery store. He doesn't want people running away from him. But yeah, Dr. Kochin takes the brain and puts it into a big robot body, and then Karma freezes the lab over, and for some reason Dr. Kochin is also a robot. We don't exactly learn how this happens or why this happens or anything like that, but he's a robot too, and he ends up being defeated by, I believe it was Gohan. But yeah, Krillin does get to rescue Bulma, I think. But so there's that, I guess. But yeah, The World's Strongest is a very fun time. I had this film on VHS alongside Dead Zone in the original Pioneer dub. And in the Pioneer dub / the Ocean dub, Goku's voice is very, very emulatable to the magnificently legendary Masako Nozawa. Masako Nozawa Masako is the definitive Goku in terms of the voice. It is. It's the iconic voice, you know? And I believe it's Peter Kalamas who is voicing Goku in the Pioneer dub of World's Strongest on the VHS copies and whatever Pioneer re-release of the DVD. But there is a certain moment, a certain cry, a certain shout that Peter Kalamas makes with the Goku when he's frozen by Epifuria into the whole iceness. Goku shouts, Kaioken! And then it sounds exactly like Masako Nozawa, almost very, very, very close to the syllablenesses of Masako. If you want to compare that moment with Masako's version, with Peter Kalamas' version, you can hear that Kalamas is doing really well here, and I'd argue that he made an excellent Goku, man. But yeah, hearing this again with Sean Schemmel, this might be my first time watching this with the Funimation dub over the, instead of the Pioneer dub. I listened to the Pioneer / Ocean dub many times on VHS as a kid, but I've never actually sat down and watched the Funimation redub version. I'd argue that the Pioneer one is better, but that's just because I have nostalgia for that one. I've watched that one dozens of times. I wore out the tape. I would just watch it, rewind, watch it again, rewind. I would watch through both Dead Zone and World's Strongest so many times as a kid. It was a fantastic time period to be a Dragon Ball fan in the late 90s and early 2000s. It was a fantastic time period. But yeah, I would say that this one is just a little bit better than Dead Zone in terms of action, fun little concepts, but in terms of like choreography, it is pretty much neck and neck. There's some really good moments in Dead Zone. Probably one of my absolute favorite moments in Dead Zone was Goku fighting the two henchmen on the rooftop, where they bring out swords and Goku's fighting using his power pole, the Nyoibo. He's fighting using that. We never get to see adult Goku fight using that, to my knowledge, but this is the first time I've seen it happen with him, and it was fantastic to see him fighting sword fights with his pole, with his power pole, and it was excellent. Good choreography, good animation, good stuff there. And we get to see that again here. We get to see that Goku is a martial artist first, before he's just pew pew pew. He's a martial artist. We can actually see the little hands doing a little friggy, little flippity floppities and all that stuff. He's doing really good there. Goku's doing real good there. Roshi's doing real good there. Piccolo's doing real good there. Krillin, he's just happy to be here. I would argue that Yamcha should have also shown up to help out. Maybe even Tien. but they'll get to come around soon in the next film we're going to talk about. On this little retrospective breakdown, we'll be talking about Tree of Might next, and I'm going to be bringing this copy out instead of the re-release version, because this one has some really good lines in it. But yeah, this is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I went on many tangents. If I just kept it just to reviewing this, it might be 10-15 minutes, but it's very nice to go on these little journeys, go off topic, talking about all sorts of other stuff while breaking down these films, because it is an excellent time. It is an excellent franchise. I hope you enjoy it.